Now, I can make it through the Elite Four every time as long as I have the Legendary on the front of the box and a couple full restores, but I'm certainly no competitive Pokemon trainer. The most I know about EVs is that if I level them up at night, I get Umbreon. However, while I usually hate to lose, when it comes to Pokemon, I don't mind spending a little time in the lab to concoct a unique roster, even if they could probably be defeated by the wildlife living outside of my apartment. I battle strictly for the love of the game, especially if they're willing to provide the game for free. So I downloaded Pokémon Champions on the Switch when it first came out, going into it having lower expectations after being a little disappointed by my last two Pokémon experiences. I thought not setting the bar as high would allow me to enjoy it a bit more, but for the most part, outside of a couple crispy move animations, it feels a little underwhelming to me. Not to say there aren't some things I really enjoy about this title, but for one that's comfortable already pushing me to spend $15 a month between a membership and a battle pass, I hoped for a little more. I find myself comparing it to another dedicated Pokemon battle simulator that still holds up 2 decades later. Aspects of the gameplay, character customization, move variety, even the dialogue with the receptionist that Pokemon Battle Revolution simply does better. No, I don't say that to overhype Battle Revolution, or to antagonize you by bashing champions as if you shouldn't enjoy it unless you're blissfully unaware of this 2006 title. I'm simply acknowledging some of the ways that Battle Revolution could serve as a great role model for Game Freak to look up to as they continue building out their live service game. So after taking a trip down memory lane to ensure I wasn't completely blinded by nostalgia, I've identified some things that make the Wii title so enjoyable, and how those ideas could not only improve the quality of battles in Pokémon Champions, but help to grow the battling scene through this game for many years to come. Now, Champions definitely does a great job making competitive battling much more accessible than it's ever been in the past. No searching the ocean for heart scales to pay the move tutor, or cycling back and forth through towns hatching eggs for IVs. Now you can visit the training facility and quickly transform some of your favorite mons you own into a competitively viable team. However, heavy emphasis on some. Despite that the Pokemon Company seemingly wants more Pokemon than future generations will be able to memorize, they decided to only include 187 of them in the game at launch. Can't fight with my favorite Legendary or my favorite Middle Evolution. Unlike Pokemon Battle Revolution, where not only was every single one of the 493 known to exist at the time playable, but they all had some personality. They didn't just stand still in one place breathing while awaiting commands. Pokemon had animations for getting knocked back by damaging moves, animations for returning to their spot, and if your Pokemon's attacking with Leaf Blade, they're actually running up to the opponent to hit him with it. Small Pokemon were tiny, big Pokemon were huge, feigning Pokemon were dramatic as possible. Felt much more like the battles I'd watch on my TV every Saturday morning. That's what younger me thought Pokemon battling would be like when the games moved to console. However, despite Champions existing solely to do battle on consoles and phones much stronger than anything that existed in 2006, the visual experience is still more similar to the DS games, which I could understand a bit more if they had actually brought every Pokemon over. Definitely wouldn't understate the time investment it would take to animate some life into over 1,000 Pokemon, mainly because I don't know. But for reference, the developer Genius Sonority, which has since been tasked with maintaining Pokemon Cafe Remix, was able to animate hundreds more than what's currently in Champions, and that's back when RAM for consoles wasn't even in the gigabytes. It's definitely not impossible to incorporate some more animations, but if they're content with keeping the same level of detail they've had, I'm just left to wonder why we're limited to less than a fifth of the total Pokedex. Just 2 years ago, my team for Pokemon Violet was comprised of all birds. 6 birds that I know have updated models and animations roughly the same quality, yet I can only use a single one in Champions. I get that IceQ isn't exactly meta-defining, but that's part of the fun. A Rattata can still take down the strongest of Pokemon. People much better than I can win a world championship with Apache Risu. If they're not really making a new game as much as they are pooling assets from past games, it's as simple as restricting the mons they don't want in the competitive scene from ranked battles. No reason for them to be excluded from the game. I suppose the thought is that Pokemon not viable in the current meta wouldn't get much usage, so they're not worth the effort. However, instead of just 3-on-3 singles and 4-on-4 doubles, Pokemon Battle Revolution's Coliseums had gimmicks that would alter the way you played, in turn giving some irrelevant Pokemon an opportunity to be competitive. If your team needs a specially defensive wall, you might think of Blissey, or to put an Eviolite on Chansey. No real reason to consider Happiny unless you find yourself at Sunny Park Coliseum, which is only open to baby Pokemon. Setup sweepers weren't as much of a threat at Waterfall Coliseum, where it was a series of 1v1s. Sunset Coliseum, you were more likely to battle with different Pokemon because you didn't even get to bring yours with you. You just got to choose from the same 12 as your opponent. These are the types of tournaments or limited time modes I'd love to see make it to Champions to keep the game fresh. Probably my favorite mode growing up was the one in Neon Coliseum, where before fighting you had to alternate picking with your opponent which Pokemon you wanted from a spinning wheel. Back then my strategy was simple, just try to get my Pokemon. But I think about the possibilities now. I bring a Metagross with no damaging moves strictly as bait. I go for my opponent's weather setters to throw off their game plan. It's something different for players to enjoy when they're not seeing success in the main format that's being studied non-stop. They can bring back modes like rotation battles, even to a simpler extent. Give me an online competition where everyone has to be from the Johto region, or one where you can only use starter Pokemon. If they want me to spend this VP, give me a reason to use it training up a Trico. And speaking of spending VP, I need to be able to do something about my character. Not just in regards of getting him fitted up, I'm almost certain they're holding out on the real drip for later. I want to know why I can put the giddy old man profile tag on, but my character can't be over the age of 12. This is one of the few Pokemon games where I don't have to canonically be a little kid leaving my mom. Not saying he has to look just like me, but I'd like it to appear as if I'd hit at least one tricep workout before. Now I'll admit that Pokemon Battle Revolution is far from a great character customizer, but I really appreciated it letting you pick between 6 body style presets. I could have been cool, could have been muscular, could have been a Victoria's Secret model. It gave a little more personality to my character even if I couldn't change their face. I'm not asking for NBA 2K My Player level detail in the character builder, but I'd think in 2026 I could at least get some height and weight sliders. If I was running a team full of all rock Pokemon, I'd be down to spend some VP on a green vest and some brown cargo pants to look like the stereotypical hiker we've seen in games past, but it just wouldn't hit the same without the belly. Still, there are more to games than just what the eyes can see, it's also what the ears can hear. And the whole time, the announcer for Battle Revolution was commentating like those Pokemon had families to make it home to. It probably wasn't anything more than a line of dialogue per move, but it was exhilarating as a kid to hear your opponent was
ripped by Roar of Time,
or
torched by Flare Blitz.
Felt like money was really on the line even if it was my Infernape fighting a C-Dot. It rarely felt repetitive, but it wasn't anything too complex. In my mind, it's one of the simpler implementations for them to add a ton of value to the game. They commentate battles in the anime, they commentate VGC matches. If I'm supposed to feel like a real Pokemon champion, why I gotta talk to myself. I love the Ruby and Sapphire battle theme more than the average Joe. Probably heard it over 1,000 times before I even knew how to multiply. But I still can't listen to just that and crowd noise for hours at a time. Even if I did have the option to select specific tracks instead of being forced to shuffle them all or only a specific game, right now they are all alternate versions of the same thing. Pokemon's not short on certified bangers, but even if we were to get some route music or some of the numerous themes from Battle Revolution, it'd still feel like it's missing something. I know the voice actor's 83 now, but they have to get him back in the studio to record some lines. I get they want to put emphasis on the music as one more reason to purchase a membership, but if they were willing to put in just a little more effort, they could have a much more enticing offer. For example, I feel a change of scenery would help things to feel less repetitive. Pokemon Battle Revolution had you battling in the center of the city, inside of a cave, on top of an observatory. Any of those could be redesigned and put in Champions, then it's as simple as flipping a coin before each match to see whose home court you're playing on. There are other spots from past entries, like the Coliseums from Pokemon Coliseum, or the Pokemon Stadium from, I'm not one to spend money on a free-to-play title, but if we're talking about Larry's Cafe from Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, there can be some reconsideration. After all, the old man gave me the keys to his gym. Who's to say I can't turn it into an active volcano if I see fit? I think it'd be neat if you could at least customize your gym a little bit, hang up a couple posters or something. If the Pokemon Company wants to run their bag up, that's fine by me. I just want the paid content to feel like actual enhancements to the game instead of simply paywalling haircuts and clothes. I know there's a lot of money to be made from a live service Pokemon title playable from your phone. It certainly has the potential to be just as lucrative, if not more, than Pokemon TCG Pocket, Pokemon Go, even 2016 Madden Mobile. But it's important to keep in mind the main benefit of this free-to-play title, encouraging people to play more Pokemon. Another thing Pokemon Battle Revolution emphasized, basically requiring you to purchase one of the games on the DS, since otherwise you'd have to play through the whole game with Pokemon off of the rental passes. There was a shop full of rewards like TMs that you could redeem and send to your other games to help on your journey. You and your friends could enhance your battles by connecting both your DSs and playing it through the big screen. The game was intended to improve your overall Pokemon way of life. Meanwhile, purchasing a Champions paid membership doesn't even get you any additional spaces in Pokemon Home. There are no gifts for having purchased and played through any of the other games. You can't even train your Pokemon and send them back to their game stronger than they came. 20 years later, there are so many more ways Pokemon is monetized that Champions does not incentivize. Now, we all know anything Pokemon is making money regardless, so I am very appreciative in the regard that after 2 months of playing off and on, I've not yet felt a single reason to pull the credit card out. The daily challenges leave me with excess VP to blow. I can get a new Pokemon from the ranch every day. Start to finish, it is a true free-to-play title. Guess I'm just a little disappointed that after waiting 20 years speculating how crazy the next Coliseum-type game could be, we got an entry that ruins our chances of actually seeing their full capabilities for quite a while. Now, Pokemon Battle Revolution certainly had a number of flaws, but it reminds me of a time where they seemed to be trying their best to immerse you in a world of Pokemon. I'm just burdened by having lived through that time period and having witnessed what remains to be the pinnacle of Pokemon innovation. Seems like Game Freak's strategy in recent years has been to avoid improving quality of life unless necessary. Instead, simply capitalizing on a franchise that sells faster than lemonade on a warm summer day. Here's to hoping I'm wrong though, and Game Freak continues to expand upon Champions, acknowledging the potential of what it could be, rather than settling for what they know will look good on their financial statements. Me? I don't do it for the money, but I certainly wouldn't mind to. However, still quite a few subscribers away from that dream. So, if you liked the video, I'd really appreciate you subscribing so that you might see another. If you didn't like the video, my fault. Maybe if you subscribe, I can make it up to you next time. Either way, you have a good one.